would you have advised the Prime Minister to take out this action?
I would have advised them to do it 2 years ago. This is what's happening right now in the Gaza Strip. The Hamas terrorist army is holding 20 Israeli hostages underground in tunnels where it is torturing them and starving them. Israel has been willing to pay a very high ransom to achieve the safe return of these hostages, but it was a very high ransom that Hamas was not willing to accept because it required Hamas to disarm and leave the Gaza Strip. These negotiations were being dragged out by Hamas, which refused to accept any reasonable proposal by Israel. President Trump warned Hamas again and again that this was the last warning. And the Qataris need to get the message also that we understand that they have not been a fair mediator. They have not been neutral. Qatar has been completely on the side of Hamas, essentially telling Hamas to keep the hostages.
You mentioned the hostages there. Let me just tell you what they've said in the last hour. The families of the hostages are following the developments in Doha with deep concern and heavy anxiety. A grave fear now hangs over the price that the hostages may pay. We know from the survivors who have returned that the revenge directed at the hostages is brutal. The chance of bringing them back now faces greater uncertainty than ever before. With one thing of absolute certainty, their time is running out. The hostages' families disagree with your assessment. They believe this will make things worse, not better.
I am horrified as well that any harm may come to the hostages. We have been in this situation for 2 years where Hamas has refused to release the hostages and Israel has made offer after offer. A high ransom payment is what Israel was willing to pay. Hamas was not willing to accept it. We are left with no other option but to go after the leaders of the Hamas terrorist organization who refused to budge and who celebrated on October 7th when these hostages were taken, when hostages were being taken from a music festival, from their homes. And the Qataris themselves were hosting Hamas leaders in Doha on that very moment. And Qatar did not condemn Hamas on October 7th. Qatar condemned Israel.
Well, surely rather than escalating the war, the answer is to try and continue the talks, isn't it?
The hostages are being held underground where they are being tortured and starved, while at the same time, the leaders of the Hamas terrorist army are saying that we're going to carry out more October 7th massacres until Israel is destroyed. It's a question of how much longer versus how much longer we can wait until the hostages die because they are being tortured and starved. We are at an impasse. Hamas remains in power of significant areas of the Gaza Strip. They have declared war on Israel. They have declared that they will keep fighting Israel until Israel is destroyed. And Israel's response is, no, we do not want to be destroyed. If you call for our destruction, if you carry out mass atrocities against us, it is you who will be destroyed.
Do you think Donald Trump knew about this in plenty of advance? Do you know any more detail about how much he knew and when he knew? We know there are reports on Israeli media this afternoon that he gave the green light. Is that correct?
I have seen the reports that President Trump gave Israel a green light. I have not seen anything confirmed. I'm still waiting to hear from the White House and from President Trump. I would assume that there was some kind of Israeli coordination with the Americans. We don't know if it was a green light, a yellow light, or no answer, but this is all an academic argument at this point. Israel has made very clear that the leaders of the Hamas terrorist army are not safe wherever they hide.
Middle East countries, indeed countries around the world, are queuing up to condemn this action by Israel. Do you think Prime Minister Netanyahu believes he can now act with impunity when it comes to this conflict?
I think Prime Minister Netanyahu weighs the pros and cons of every action that Israel takes. I think he has been very patient with the Hamas terrorist army that has delayed again and again any reasonable resolution to this war, which would see the Hamas terrorist army disarm and leave Gaza. I think the Prime Minister of Israel is doing what he feels is necessary for the survival and the well-being of his own country, which is not willing to live as neighbors with the Hamas death cult that is promising to kill us all.
Even to attack another nation's territory, a nation Israel is on somewhat friendlier terms with, a nation which isn't firing weapons into Israel and has no intention of doing so, and a nation which, whether you like it or not, whether those negotiations are going well or not, is at least being used as a base for talks in order to stop people dying.
Yes, these talks were going nowhere. Hamas continues to hold hostages underground where it is torturing and starving them. Israel has targeted the leaders of the Hamas terrorist organization, not the Qatari royal family, which has played a very negative role for the past 2 years, waging a massive information warfare campaign against Israel, trying to put Israel in the dock in every way, shape, and form, accusing Israel of the worst crimes against humanity. This is the same Qatar that is claiming to be a fair mediator. We know it is not a fair mediator. There's not much left to mediate. If whoever is in Gaza now, who is still holding hostages, wants to be in touch directly, I would advise that as the best path forward.
And as far as you're aware, as far as you know, the operation in Gaza City will continue, will be ramped up, will escalate. People there, innocent civilians, children, women who cannot leave Gaza City because they're either too ill or too weak or believe there is nowhere to go, then they could well get caught up in it. More deaths will happen. That's the price to pay, is it?
I would like 0 deaths to happen. Right now, Hamas remains in control of Gaza City, which is walking distance from the Israeli villages that Hamas attacked on October the 7th. A Hamas stronghold cannot be allowed to continue to exist next to Israel. That is why Israel is issuing warnings to the population of Gaza City that it is time to move south to safer areas away from Hamas's massive military infrastructure. The situation is very difficult in Gaza because the neighbor of Gaza, that would be Egypt, has refused to open its borders to people seeking a safer place during this war. It's a very difficult situation. Gaza is a densely populated area, and the Hamas terrorist army has chosen to fight from this densely populated area. So the choice was made by Hamas. Israel is responding to Hamas's choice by refusing to surrender to Hamas. We are not going to live alongside a death cult that is calling for our annihilation. We will make every effort possible to minimize harm to civilians while never giving up on the goal that the Hamas terrorist army cannot be allowed to continue to govern the Gaza Strip.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about people being able to move to safe areas. Every other day I speak to people in Gaza, to charities, to doctors, to people working for NGOs, and they all tell me there is nowhere safe in Gaza.
What's your question?
Well, my question is, it's just simply not true that there are safe places for people to go. We know that Al-Muazi has been hit by IDF missiles. We know people have been killed in these so-called safe humanitarian zones.
Yes, I want to emphasize the Israeli Defense Forces is urging people to move to safer areas. We understand that Gaza is not safe because Gaza has been turned into a massive military zone that Hamas has built a vast network of tunnels under. Hamas has RPGs, snipers, roadside bombs everywhere in Gaza. Israel has operated in some parts of Gaza, and those areas are being declared as safer than the current stronghold of Gaza City, where Hamas is declared to be the most dangerous place in Gaza. So we are urging civilians in Gaza City to move to safer areas. They would have much safer areas if Egypt would open its border crossing with the Gaza Strip and allow women and children to leave. We do not see any reason why women and children should be forced to stay in a war zone on behalf of Hamas. This is the choice that Hamas has made.
And would they be allowed to return?
Its own civilian population.
Sorry to push back on that, Daniel, but if they leave, if they're encouraged to leave, will they ever be allowed to return?
You've just moved the goalposts. We're talking about saving lives of people who are trapped in a war zone because Hamas is using them as a shield and as an effort to attack Israel. It's using its own population against Israel. So
after the war, will they be allowed to return?
I hope so, yes. I think Gaza is the home of the people who live in Gaza. What we're hearing from so many people in Gaza is that Gaza is not their home and that they have the right to move to Israel in massive numbers and change its name to Palestine. This is their goal. This is why they celebrated on October 7th.